Ready back there? Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's 5 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Wednesday, March 11th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Before we begin, I'd like a point of personal privilege. This morning we had a department head meeting, and there was a lot of concern specifically regarding public comment, public people. We received directive from perhaps Quinnipiack and the governor's office to try to practice social distancing, as it's called, and try to be 6 feet away from each other. We are not. We're trying, but yeah. So in that event, there was also some suggestion, if we have public comment, we've had events and meetings where there have been 30, 40, 50 people next door to each other. So what I would ask, if it's possible at this point, people try to sit, unless we're filled, people try to sit apart from each other as much as possible. Don't shake hands, kiss, and hug, and all the wonderful things that we like to do, because we're all friends and Woodbridge people. And if you have public comment, again, always limited to 2 minutes, but please, perhaps after you say it, you might want to get up and leave if the room is beginning to fill, so we keep it a low-filled room. And in the future, I'm not planning to do this now, we may have to limit. There's no reason to have public comment at all, but I think it's always important to hear from the public. We might end up asking folks to email their public comments in, and we will read them and just have the meeting of the board, depending on how this virus goes. Ramping up, ramping down. We have Quinnipiack Valley here this evening to give us some answers, or at least give us some hope or help or something. So in that, I just wanted to make that announcement, and I'll try to tell people as people come in, but just remind your neighbors if they walk in to do what I just said. Okay, now we'll get back to the agenda. Item 1, Pledge of Allegiance. I'd ask everyone to please stand. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Should I back up so we're 6 feet away from each other? Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is the Woodbridge Board of Education. I will invite Superintendent Robert Gilbert up. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. This is part of the microphone, I said.
It's a form for your education. Florence.
So they might be discombobulated a little bit.
Looks great. So, good afternoon, everybody.
Good evening.
And good evening, what is it? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's somewhere in between.
It's
with
really
the time
only
change.
4 o'clock, you know.
So, it's again always a pleasure to come here and give a monthly report for the Woodbridge School District and Beecher Road School. Our enrollment continues to ever climb a little by little. Last time I was here, we were in the high 850s, and now we're at 861. We're still below the 868 projected by our demographer, but we've certainly gained a lot of students since we started and opened the school in September. So just a note about that. We just celebrated yesterday, day 120 of the school year, so we've passed the 2/3 point in the year. It's hard to believe that. The kids are doing great, and it's been a very successful year. I'd like to just pause for a moment and just bring you just a little bit of an update regarding the obvious biggest item that we are facing right now, and that's the coronavirus. And just to bring up to date a little bit, for the past week, really the last couple of weeks, and really the last 24 hours, information regarding the virus has been continuously coming to school superintendents from various places: the governor's office, the State Department of Public Health, Connecticut Department of Education, and various other places. The 4 BOA superintendents for the 4 districts have been working very closely together. We've had probably 5 or 6 conference calls now in the last 24 hours as the information just keeps flowing. Each district and each superintendent has their own support team. We have a Beecher response team, and I have met regularly with that response team in terms of addressing and working at and being as proactive and ahead of the curve as we possibly can. We've been in constant contact with our medical advisor, with QVHD, our board attorney, as well as many colleagues across the region and state We've held some teacher leader meetings to facilitate some discussion as to how we proceed ahead and just how do we venture into the unknown, because there are a lot of unknown things in terms of potential cancellations or potential other hurdles. We've met, meaning myself, I met with the union presidents of the different unions. So ultimately, the BOA superintendents come back together, and we've been working very, very closely together to try to have continuity between the districts in the region. We're trying to have the philosophy of being both prepared, but also being very flexible, because things seem to continue to change. We are trying to commit ourselves to the possibility and the hopefulness that we can continue to operate schools in a consistent manner as possible. So part of our preparation that the 4 districts are going to hopefully be able to realize and achieve is to have a late opening on Monday. We hope to be able to get to Monday, and I say that with all sincerity because I know there's been some other districts, you may have heard that through the news, that have actually canceled for a few days because of situations in their districts. But we plan to have all 4 BOA districts have a late opening this coming Monday, where staff will report at the normal time. Students will be delayed, and the staff coming in at their normal time will be able to work on some training and some planning for these 2 hours while the students are not in the building. So that is one of our goals. You may hear about that out there in the community. We ultimately trying to provide some opportunities for teachers to come together and plan for the potential of having to do online learning, which is not the recommended route by the State Department. I'll just say that there's been a lot of misinformation. The state is not recommending distant learning in terms of instead of kids being in school. It's an option that districts can do, but it's a very risky option. They're really asking districts to think about, if they're going to close, and we have not made any kind of decision about that, but if we were to close fully, and then to just make up the days in June, and if necessary in the April vacation time. So that is really the mode of thinking and mindset that we're in right now. It's an evolving situation, as you know. We're trying to work and plan in a calm and measured manner that allows teaching and learning to still take place for the kids. We are doing there's a number of things I could talk about in terms of being very thorough in our cleaning not just in the building, but cleaning buses, checking out the attendance and monitoring attendance, not just in our own districts, but sharing that information so we can see if there are any attendance patterns that may start to happen. We're certainly taking a look at people coming into the building and really starting to restrict that whole idea of outside groups coming in and using the building, or outside assembly people coming in and doing programs for the kids. So we're looking at that, and most importantly, we're trying to keep students at the forefront of all of our decisions. So I just wanted to bring you up to date a little bit on that. We have sent information out. And I'll send my most recent one over to you folks tonight, Beth and Tony. But we have just sent another letter out to parents this afternoon at 4 o'clock. I've kept the board updated, and we are keeping our staff updated as well on that. Going on to some other topics, just briefly. I don't have a lot of new information to share about our current FY20 operating budget, except to say that our next meeting is this coming Monday night. We still continue to show a small surplus this year of roughly $30,000 to $40,000. That will change a little bit to the positive on Monday night, most likely, as we report that out. I believe I told you last time I was here that we are doing a spending freeze on all non-salary and non-contractual or non-essential items. Our goal and our commitment is to do everything possible to be ending the year in the black, which is where we are right now, and we want to stay there. Our FY21 operating budget that presented us a month or so ago will be back here at the table or here in the audience next Thursday when you have the next Board of Finance meeting to hear and be ready to respond if there's any questions as the Board of Finance makes their future decisions, getting ready for moving that to the April and May processes. I think I mentioned about our great accountability report results, which really is our report card for Beecher Road School and the Woodbridge School District. We did present that to the Board of Ed last month. Very positive, continued upward results in that report, and the board received this very positively, and they actually passed a motion commending the students, staff, and administration during the actual meeting. Our principal search process has concluded. I want to thank the principal search committee. One of them, I believe, is actually in the audience here. And they concluded their work, and we congratulated Lisa Sherman as being appointed the principal. As you probably know, she's been acting principal for the entire year, and the staff was just overjoyed by that because she's done a great job. And so we're moving forward very positively, and we're going to be starting our assistant principal search process in the coming weeks. Just a couple more items here. We are planning to prepare and do a construction of our next strategic plan. At the last meeting, I mentioned that we're looking for a few community members who might want to serve on this committee. I'm still looking for a few community members, so if anybody's interested here in the room or out there in the audience, please just let my office know, and we'll be glad to entertain those entries of interest. And if we have more than 2 or 3 interested people, we'll have to conduct a lottery on that. And lastly, our annual survey is hoping to go out in the next month or so as we fine-tune that at our board meeting on Monday night. So that's the end of my report. I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll just point out that Mr. Sherman is actually the first principal who graduated from Beecher Road School. So,
Wow,
yeah, yeah.
How about that?
that's fun.
Yes. And she's very proud of that, too.
Of course, you should be.
So, and what that really, I mean, all I will say is that she really has a deep devotion to the community, obviously from her roots, but you know, it's amazing. She's another story of a person who grew up here, left, and came back. And you folks know those stories, and some of you are sitting here at the table. It's the same stories. So, yes, thanks, Sandy.
That's great, thank you. Thanks for that, Sandy. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Bob.
thank you.
Third item on the agenda is the first Selectmen's report. I'll begin with an update on the Thomas Darling House. Following our February 25th Special Board of Selectmen meeting, per the approved motion, I'm planning to establish a Thomas Darling House Ad Hoc Oversight Advisory Group. Jerry Weiner and I toured the property and the outbuildings and the main house yesterday, along with architect Rick Weiss, resident Dick Blackwell, and Amity Woodbridge Historical President Alexia Belperon, and Todd Levine, who is from the state DOCD, and he's one of the overseers regarding grants, and he was responsible for, I guess, helping us with the Good to Great program, so that's good. Todd has agreed to help us work with the society to develop the charge to the oversight group to reflect the needs of both the town and the society. He will make sure that the charge is to protect and preserve the property. My goal has and always will be to protect the property, and we have no intent of turning it into a party venue or a wedding venue or a tourist destination. Presently, I have agreements from the following people: Town Plan and Zoning member and farmer Chris Sorensen, historical preservationist and someone who is intimately familiar with the house, Leland Torrance, Town Clerk Stephanie Charlaglio, who is intimately responsible as her keeper of all town records, and resident and interested person Richard Blackwell. I've asked Alexia for her recommendation of whom they would like to serve, and she's going to get back to me. I will keep you posted. So we don't have an ad hoc charge at this point because we're working with the state to make sure it's one that protects the society and the town. I don't know if we have another meeting scheduled yet, but we will. Todd's willing to work with us, which I was very excited about. Regarding coronavirus, this morning I convened a follow-up meeting with town department heads to review their department's specific needs and plans. We had good dialogue and a helpful Q&A discussion. As we have done already, we will continue to post all current information we receive on our town website for residents and internal staff memos as well. We have decided to cancel all programming for the library, human services, and recreation from March 14th to March 28th. We will continue to monitor the situation and may need to extend or repeal the cancellation depending on how things go. Last week, I convened a meeting for town and school staff to hear from the Quinnipiack Valley Health Department interim director regarding coronavirus, COVID-19, and they're here this evening and they'll be up shortly. So thank you for coming again. I was joined by the superintendents and nursing staff from the Woodbridge and Amity school districts and representatives from the police department, human services department, and registrars of voters. QVHD Interim Director Metheny, did I say that right? Okay, thanks. Who will be joining us later, explain the QVHD is in regular contact with the State Department of Public Health and the Federal Center for Disease Control. All I want our staff and residents to do is to be prepared as possible, and I want to continue to be in touch with the health district and our first responders and share any updates or additional guidance as we receive it. In the interim, I have asked everyone who is ill, please, and they must, stay home. It is imperative that we all practice good hygiene and, above all, wash your hands with soap and water, hot water. And there were some recommendations that were given in a conference that I was on Monday night from 5 to 6:30 from the governor's office. And this is more for the public, but we're all members of the public. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to just read some of the recommendations from the governor's office. People are at higher risk for COVID-19 if they have symptoms of the virus, cough, fever, shortness of breath, and if they were in contact with a positive case of COVID-19 or have traveled to countries with community transmission, such as China, Italy, South Korea, Iran, and Japan. Someone is considered a contact if they have had direct face-to-face contact with a person with COVID-19. People who think they have COVID-19 should call their health care provider. These people should not go directly to a health care facility without first calling a health care provider unless they are experiencing a medical emergency, in which case you call 911. Get yourself to a facility. If you haven't already, get your flu shot and make sure people around you do the same. Wash your hands thoroughly and often throughout the day. Use warm water and soap. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand gel. Cough or sneeze into your elbow. Viruses can spread by coughing or sneezing on other people or into your hands. Stay home from work or school if you are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. Germs spread this way. Get plenty of sleep. Be physically active. Manage your stress. I'm doing really that well. I'm doing a great job at that. Drink plenty of fluids and eat nutritious foods. Keep surfaces, especially bedside tables, surfaces in the bathrooms, and toys for children clean by wiping them down with a household disinfectant. For most updated information from the state of Connecticut, there is guidance on ct.gov/coronavirus, or you can also, I guess, always look at the CDC website. And we are looking at that every day. My last thing to talk about is the 2030 Task Force. It's a new thing. I'm putting together a new committee, the Woodbridge 2030 Task Force, which will include representatives from the Board of Selectmen. That'll be me. I hope that's okay. The Board of Finance, EDC, and TPZ, and a few residents and business owners. My goal is to grow our grand list and make sure Woodbridge is fiscally stable. There are a lot of good ideas. Some are already in the works. I'd like the committee to take a look at those. I think we need a comprehensive big picture plan for how to move forward and grow our grand list. As you all know, the plan for developing part of the Country Club of Woodbridge is off the table, and we just completed reval in which our grand list was reduced. We need a bold plan, and I think this committee will have a valuable contribution. We need to lower taxes and become more attractive to new businesses, help our current businesses grow, and succeed and diversify our housing stock. I envision this committee recommending new policies, changes to our zoning regulations, a marketing campaign, capital infrastructure, and things I haven't even come up with yet. We really need big thinking grounded in reality. In that context, tonight we will hear from Economic Development Commission later on the agenda. Again, I'll say it again. Tonight at public comment, I ask that you follow a practice that New Haven is instituting at their budget hearings. If you are here for public comment, share your thoughts, and then please feel free to leave and watch the rest of the meeting on TV. At future meetings during the duration of this public health emergency, we may allow people just to submit public comments via email. We'll just have to monitor the situation. So with that, I will turn it over to number 4, which is liaison reports.
Could you repeat again the dates that the programs are canceled and which groups are canceled?
Sure, I can tell you, sure. It's Human Services,
Mm-hmm.
the library, and recreation. It begins Saturday, March 14th, and it will allegedly right now end on the 28th, But if we get an update next week that says that this virus is ramping up or down or whatever, we will change it again. But that's what we've done as of now. And I spoke to commissioners of the 3 departments and also the department heads, and they will be sending out notices to all of their people.
Okay.
It'll be on their individual websites, as is ours, when I finally get to review what I'm gonna say. But I haven't done it yet.
Programs for recreation
Correct,
are canceled.
yes,
Swimming and everything.
correct,
Okay.
all of it, yeah.
Mhm.
John was good with
No,
that.
that's fine,
yeah.
I just wanted to.
Everything.
Saturday.
We couldn't figure out, well, we let this one and not that one, it's
No,
just,
there's a lot, I know there's a lot of,
correct,
that program's huge.
right, yep.
Okay.
So just in the abundance of caution, we're not trying to hurt people, we're trying to keep people safe. So that's what we've decided to do as of today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, Sandy, you wanna start? Liaison reports.
Oh, liaison reports.
Yep.
Okay, I attended the Library Commission meeting on Monday, March 9th. And we actually discussed a new hire from within, which will come up with our personnel committee to replace Lynn Sarah, who is retiring on April 8th, I think. And
8th
there.
or 9th? Can't remember. 8th, okay,
Eighth, it
you're
is
right,
the 8th.
okay.
And there is actually a reception for Lynn on March 31st from 4 to 6 p.m. If anyone is interested in going, they can contact Eric just so they can keep track of the numbers. And Lynn has been here for 20 years at
It's
the
hard to
library.
believe.
It is.
I will have a citation for her on behalf of the Board of Selectmen for that day, so.
And so there is a recommendation for an internal hire, which we can cover in the Personnel Committee report. They are also pursuing, Eric is with Tony, getting fiber access for the library. Right now there is fiber access at Amity, and you are applying to get some funding to be able to extend that to the library. It will greatly improve the type of access, computer access, that is available at the library. So hopefully that will go through. And that's really it. And I'd like to report on the Community Council. This is an ad hoc group that I am a member of, and we are in the process of formulating a Welcome to Woodbridge program. We feel that one of the things that is lacking in our community, and Betsy is our support, and she's done a great job, is people don't know where to turn when they come to town. It's a great town, but they don't know about a lot of the services that are available, the activities, and so we are putting together a Welcome to Woodbridge bag that will contain a welcome packet. We are getting local sponsors so that we can actually pay for the bags through the sponsors who will have their logo on the bag, and they will be able to put material in the bag about either their business or their organization. And we will have a group of people who will deliver these to new residents within a month to 45 days after they move in. We'll use the resident sales list as our reference point. And then we are planning to have quarterly newcomers gatherings. And not only for new residents, we're going to go back for people who have lived here just 2 years or less. And these will be quarterly and held at different places around the community. Hopefully the library. I'm meeting with the Beecher PTO, the Garden Club, and Massaro Farm, so that they can get to meet other new residents. And we'll be developing postcards to do that. So hopefully that will be a nice addition for people moving into town.
That's good, thank you. That's it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Joe,
Thank you very much. I
welcome.
have 2 reports. The first is the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, which had a special meeting on March 2nd. Basically, the meeting was called and the entire meeting was delegated to potential Scrivener errors in the Town of Woodbridge zoning regulations effective July 1, 2019. The regulations were reviewed and any corrections that were necessary in regards to wording was adopted. Second meeting was the Board of Police Commissioners, which was, last night. There was a swearing in of a new officer, Stephen Perlakis. In addition, the financial report was reviewed, and as of 8 months, the department is on target to meet its goal of achieving no overrun. As far as the activity report, which I passed out to each and every one of you, I thought it'd be interesting to see there are 64 call descriptions, which illustrates what a great job I think that the department is doing. In regards to the report of the Chief of Police, the Penguin Plunge on February 29th for the Special Olympics, 2 officers from our department were involved. He also mentioned the IT update that as of June, no high school personnel will be involved. There'll be a new company, and he feels very strongly that it's an upgrade and a very high qualified company. In regards to the Ring Neighborhood Portal Law Enforcement Platform Cooperation, they are adopting at no cost. In regards to personnel matters, new dispatcher update started January 27th, and now they're at full strength in regards to dispatchers. And the chief had several letters of recognition and commendation, but he also expressed very concerned about the 2 vacancies in the department that were eliminated. I guess they're down from 26 to 23, and he's very concerned in regards to the safety of the town of Woodbridge. The Woodbridge Traffic Authority met. There was a stop sign approved for Grouse Lane and Fraser Drive. They also are looking at an update on Baldwin Road, and they decreased the speed limit to 35 miles per hour. The Woodbridge Fathers Baseball League requested a road closure on April 25th, and that was approved. In regards to the driveway entrance being widened to the Fitzgerald property, the department feels they don't have any authority, and they are informing the first selectman that maybe it should be referred to P&Z or Public Works. And the annual Woodbridge Road Race on October 3rd was approved, and that concluded the activities for last night.
Thank you. Ika.
I attended the Recreation Commission meeting on February 24th. One part of the discussion was just that they're preparing for their second annual triathlon, which will take place on June 6th. They're looking to join it, and Betsy may have some additional information. They're looking to include a wellness type of program that might include yoga and Tai Chi, things of that nature, is being discussed. They're also Camp Hero. They plan to expand Camp Hero program to 2 weeks this coming year. Flyers were developed for the running club, the fitness center, the pool, ice skating, and gymnastics, and there was mention made that they could use a color printer for some of their flyers. And asked that I bring that up. Skating rink was put up, but it was at this point in time taken down shortly after being put up, only because the weather did not cooperate with it, but it was certainly a success for the short time that it was there, and got a considerable amount of use while it was up. And it will require an additional trailer, which they're making arrangements for, and I believe they've already spoken to Tony about, so for storage, to make sure that it stays in the shape it needs to for use in years future. All the outdoor facilities are closed except the playgrounds at this point in time. Tennis courts will open on the 1st. The sports programs are going very well. With they have a 10-year high, as a matter of fact, for basketball on Saturdays. And from a revenue standpoint, their revenues were up a bit from last year, and probably had to do with the closing of the pool, et cetera, the things that happened last year. And Amity Softball Little League got their permits, and that's about it. I was not able to attend. I was out of state for the EDC meeting, but I do know that there will be a representative here later on to give you an update in terms of one of the items in particular.
Thank you. Joe?
I'll defer to Dwight.
Oh, you into your stuff, or?
No, I'm just passing.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
attended the inland wetlands meeting on February 19th. There was only one application heard for 4 Lions Road, and they set up a site visit to be done on March 14th. And there was some discussion about the input on the turf field at Amity. Apparently, there was a quest to see if maybe inland wetlands had any action or take any action, and they decided it wasn't in their realm, so, so no action was required. And I attended Human Services, meeting on March 2nd. The commission approved the recommendation for a new Human Services Director, which will be talked about tonight, and it was unanimous, the decision. And again, it was basically an in-house person that will become director. The lunch program, they've been talking about this for a little bit, but they're looking at raising the fee for non-residents by $1 on or around July 1st. Right now, the residents pay $3 to eat in and $4 if they want to take out. Non-residents would then start paying $4 and $5 if they wanted to take out. And there's about a third of those who eat there are non-residents, about a third of the people, so. The 8th grade Mardi Gras event at the high school was a success. Only 37 out of all 3 schools attended, but from what I understand, they all had a blast. So it was all fun, so. The after-school guided study at Beecher is going very well, and and right now it has over 30 students enrolled in this, so when I understand it's really a success. And last, the volunteer tea is scheduled to be held on April 23rd at the senior center. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much. Because we have a few minutes, I think we'll skip, and you guys are here. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 representatives from Quinnipiack Valley Health District to come to Town Hall tonight to meet they were here last week to meet with some of the town department heads and school representatives. And I asked you guys to... Oh, Katie, I'm sorry. You're here too. We'll go to you next. Sorry. I'm always flying through stuff. You're next. You're next on the agenda. I just skipped you. Thank you. Come on up. Sorry. Trying to get through this agenda, Joe. Sorry,
Thank
Katie.
you all.
Apologies.
Katie Poole from Massaro Community Farm. It's a pleasure to be here and give you what we deem is about a quarterly update on things that are happening at Massaro. We're just as happy as you all are, I'm sure, about an early spring. This is going to be the 11th season of Massaro, so we're very excited about that. Planning for our normal CSA distribution. So those are folks who subscribe to get a season's worth of vegetables on the farm. We had the highest enrollment numbers in 10 years last year at 230 families getting vegetables from the farm each week, and that doesn't even include all the farmers markets we attend and people who come directly to the farm to buy food, and also the food donations, which I'll touch upon later. Compared to our early start, where we were farming on 4 or so acres, we now have about 10 to 12 acres under cultivation. And I'm very pleased to say that we have 4 year-round staff, and that number jumps to anywhere between 12 and 16 seasonal staff when we're in the height of the season. So we feel like we're growing slowly but surely, and have a lot of return staff, which we're very pleased about. People really enjoy working there, and they enjoy working under our farm manager. We continue to maintain our commitment to food donations, and we did round out 2019 with a total of 6,250 pounds of food donated as of the end of December. Coincidentally, our numbers do vary from year to year depending on the yield, but coincidentally, that's actually our 10-year average as well. So we're very pleased about that we can continue to do that program. And the number of agencies in the area include Woodbridge Human Services, but the number of agencies that we work with who are delivering those hunger relief efforts continues to grow. So let's see what else. We will have our regularly expected events, the ones that we do every year, again on the calendar this year, and those include Celebrate Spring, which is coming up on May 17th. For those of you who might remember or sort of anticipate attending the farm's annual meeting, which we have always held in March, is going to be held in May, and we are planning to have it on that day. So we're very pleased, and we figure people are much rather enjoy visiting the farm than coming out in March when there's not much to see. So that's a shift for us this year, and you can look for news about that. Again, that will be on the day of Celebrate Spring. We'll also be participating in the Woodbridge Sustainable Woodbridge Day this year. We'll also planning on our annual dinner on the farm and family fun day. And there are numerous other events that we plan that are on the smaller scale, but continue to provide an opportunity for people, for the general public to come and enjoy the farm. There are also lots of individual and volunteer activities. So if you know anyone who's interested, there's no minimum skill level required, but this is the time of year when we start to receive lots of those calls. And so we do things like volunteer orientations to kind of get people to know the farm, show them around, show them how to use tools, introduce them to the rest of the staff, and kind of take them under our wing. And we always have lots of new faces. So it's, lovely to get that sort of level of interest always growing. Let's see, I will say one of the things that we actually had a strategic planning meeting today, and one of the things that continues to draw a large amount of our attention is how we incorporate the property overall into an educational space for the community. And the ways in which we do that continue to expand. And that's just a testament to, as superintendent said, the growing number of families, the growing number of children in the community, and the things that we offer on the farm range anywhere from now what we have a pre-K program, which is a weekend program, to after-school programs, continuing field trips, summer camp, adult workshops, and many more. And the list is growing. So I would encourage you to visit our website and be on our list. Our main method of distribution is our newsletter, although the town newsletters that have been going out have been a great help to spread the word for our events. We are obviously, as you all are, closely monitoring the public health situation. We did have a particular event that had the capacity for about 500 people, a partnership which was a concert 2-night event with Paul Winter that was planned for March 19th and March 22nd, and we have postponed that. So we're working on some dates later this year to reschedule that. And we're also evaluating things as the dates come up. For instance, our partnership with Woodbridge Rec for after school, as well as any other workshops that are coming up in the spring. And we'll sort of make those announcements on our website, voicemail, social media, as much as we can to sort of keep the public informed. So I think that's about it, what I have. Lots happening, so we're excited to head into a second decade on the farm. We feel like we've really passed a big milestone, and so we're eagerly planning the next 10 years. So,
Wonderful.
yes,
Thank you.
yes, I will tell you that the farmer has had the staff out this week, and being able to have dry, warm weather in March really lets them get a jump on just getting things ready. So they're very appreciative.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Anyone have any questions for Katie? No? Okay, thanks again. Now we'll go to QVHC. If you guys want to come up.
I'd ask Ally, our public information officer, to start, and then I'll finish
Okay.
up.
You just have to speak into the mic. Thank you. And just introduce yourself for the
Yeah.
public that just arrived.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Mulvihill. I go by Allie. I'm with Quinnipiack Valley Health District. You might hear me refer to that as QVHD going forward, but that's the local health department for Bethany, North Haven, Hampton, and Woodbridge. So I'm going to do a quick briefing of key points from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on the current situation regarding coronavirus. So I'm just going to read a few bullet points, and then I'll tell you what's going on in the state of Connecticut. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, and then we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. The coronavirus, as you might know, is a respiratory illness, referred to as COVID-19 right now. Community spread is being detected in a growing number of places. This update was provided on March 10th at 10:20 p.m. So I say the time and the date because things have changed. They're rapidly evolving. So at that point in time, there was 647 reported cases in the United States. That has since gone up. More cases of COVID-19 are expected in the United States in the coming days, including more community spread. As the outbreak continues, at some point, widespread transmission of COVID-19 in the United States is expected to occur. Many people will get sick, but based on what is known about this virus, most people will not develop serious illness. So I do want to say that one more time because it's important to note that as many people will get sick, based on what we know, most people will not develop serious illness. Based on data that came out of China, where the virus first emerged, older adults and persons of all ages who have serious long-term health problems seem to be at higher risk for more serious COVID-19 illness. So that's why it's essentially important for these people who are at higher risk to take special precautions to reduce the risk of getting sick, and I'll address those. Our public health efforts at this time are focused on containing the spread of virus and mitigating the impact of the virus on our communities. As you might know, there's no vaccine at this point in time, and there's talks about that being at least a year out. There are not antivirals at this point in time. So what we are really communicating with our residents and our partners are what we refer to as non-pharmaceutical interventions. And what that means is what we can do that doesn't involve a vaccine or antivirals to help protect us and prevent the spread. So I know we've shared this document with some of our partners in the community at our meeting earlier, but I just want to revisit those for everybody's information because I think it's a great way for us to kind of spread germs, stop the spread of germs at this point in time and to protect yourselves. These non-pharmaceutical interventions include avoiding close contact with people who are sick. So if someone is sick, try to keep that social distancing of 6 feet from them, kind of keep away from them. If you're sick yourself, make sure that you're staying home and you're taking care of yourself with plenty of rest, nutritious food, adequate sleep, things like that. It's really important right now to cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue and then throw that tissue away in a trash bin. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. So that's a challenging one. It's something that we all do out of habit, but right now it's really important to try to avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. The virus needs to get into your body for you to develop symptoms and get sick, so you're giving it kind of a vehicle to get into your system if you do that. So avoid doing that. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces. Make sure you're cleaning them and you're disinfecting them. And wash your hands. This is really important. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Make sure that you're paying attention to in between your fingers, your thumbs as well. Some people think about when you wash your hands, you might not always get your thumbs. So you're in between your fingers, your thumbs, underneath your nails for at least 20 seconds. Soap and water, warm water preferably. You could use cold if that's only what's available. Hand sanitizer is a good alternative, but as I say, it's a good alternative. If soap and water is available, that's the ideal situation to wash your hands. The hand sanitizer is there if soap and water isn't, and your hands aren't visibly soiled. Then you would use hand sanitizer in between when you can wash your hands. So those are the messagings that we're giving out to our residents at this point in time. We're encouraging everyone to share those preventative measures. We've shared it with our schools, other town partners, residents, anybody who's calling. And we're more than happy to kind of answer any questions and elaborate a little bit more. What's going on in the state of Connecticut as of right before I came into the meeting, and I always give a timestamp because it is rapidly evolving. There were 3 confirmed cases in the state of Connecticut. So that was right before I came in here, a little before 5 o'clock. So I don't know what happened while I was in here, but it was 3 as of right before 5 o'clock. And we're more than happy to take any questions, myself and our Director of Health, Rick Matheny. So feel free to ask. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought we'd wait for this question so we're both finished.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, I have a copy of all the information that you guys gave out last week, and we did send it out electronically to all the people that were in attendance. But if the board would like this sent to them electronically, we're happy to do that. So does that sound good? Okay, rather than, it's a lot, we don't want to take out more forests. Okay, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Rick Matheny. I actually volunteered to be an interim health director between Leslie Balch and her replacement, thinking there would be
Good timing.
a really easy thing to do. I had spent 36 years as the health director of the Farmington Valley Health District, so I figured I had some idea how health districts were, and I could be a bridge between the past and the future.
Wow.
Timing is everything in life, and I guess I don't do well with time, apparently. So, so a couple of things. Based on, well, number one, I did spend a noon time today being the guest speaker on Municipal Voice for CCM. So if you're interested in knowing what I had to say, that podcast is available on CCM's website. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes. We did have a conference call with the State Health Department from 1 to 2 today, and there are a couple of things that I would like to sort of emphasize. One is the state epidemiologist basically said that we are basically days away from moving from a pre-epidemic approach to an epidemic approach here in the state. That community transmission is inevitable. That when that happens, efforts at quarantining will probably be stopping, and we're just going to be telling people who are ill to stay home. We're going to, the hospitals are, the New Haven Hospital system is setting up a receiving area on their grounds, which will be like a structure, like a tent or a temporary structure, which people will be directed to by their family care providers if they show up with symptoms or calling the symptoms. We're telling people not to go to see their doctor or to go to the emergency room first. We're advising people if you're not doing well to call your family care provider or your primary care physician prior to making any decisions about going any place. Based on that, and that's not going to be easy to do because they're going to be getting phone calls from everybody. But we're trying to advise people to self-monitor, take their own temperatures, see how they're feeling. Are they developing serious respiratory problems? And if that's the case, then we'll be directing them to the receiving areas at the hospital. But that's not happening just yet. In a few days, that's going to be up and running as I understand it. We are also, the state lab right now is able to test about 30 to 40 people a day in terms of the swabs and nasal swabs and throat swabs. They have 2 people in the lab to do this. They are in the midst of training additional staff. And by next week, they hope to be able to run 3 8-hour shifts and maybe ramp up the amount of testing to do 50 or 60 people a day. So right now, they're only testing people who are in hospitals and who are presenting with symptoms. And so there's no testing available for people who just show up at doctor's offices or anything at this juncture through the state lab. Now, there are 2 private companies that are ramping up their ability to do this. And so far, I don't think we've seen it happen yet in Connecticut, but I understand any day now that they're going to start receiving samples from private providers. There's a problem with that system, however. Most private providers don't have personal protective equipment, and they're very reluctant to be the location where they do the swabbing of the nasal cavity and the pharyngeal primarily because they're going to aerosolize whatever is in there, and they're not protected themselves. So there's going to be a bottleneck someplace still. I don't know how that's going to be solved. They're talking about setting up, again, in the hospital grounds, a place for people to be referred by their physician, not just showing up on their own, to have these samples collected and sent to a private lab. I don't think that's up and running yet. And I think once we find out that, we will let you know. But that's sort of the state of where we are with that kind of thing about testing. In terms of travel, I think the state has pretty much decided that it's not worth now trying to do any follow-up with travel from the level 3 countries. Actually, you stand a better chance of being infected by someone coming from New Rochelle or Boston or Providence than you do from China these days. So I think that's going to be ending. I don't know what's going to happen with emergency medical services. We're going to meet with them tomorrow from the 4 towns. We have 180 expired N95 respirators that we're going to distribute to them based on population. As a start, I don't know how many people are going to be calling 911. No one knows the answers to these questions. All I can say is I'm going to say that probably within several weeks, we're going to be in a state where this is widespread, and we're going to be telling people to stay home. And I don't know about the canceling of events. There's a magic number being thrown around as 100, but that's just a made-up number. When you think about how many people can you put in a room and we all stay 6 feet apart from each other, and I don't think too many people.
Spread out, you guys.
How many people are going to make those calculations? So I think school systems and the town governments are going to probably be starting to err on the side of caution.
Right.
And perhaps think
That's
about.
why we did what we did today.
You did
just
the same
to
thing,
begin,
exactly.
you know.
And I've spoken to Kurt Lang, and I think he's going to be doing the same thing. So, and the school systems are taking it one day at a time, but they've already canceled, field trips for sure. And I don't know when a decision is going to be made about the school itself. When I'm asked a question, I say to them, well, all of our efforts are aimed at one thing, and that is to slow down the distribution of the virus in the community. And one way of doing that, of course, is get people away from each other and not have them concentrated in buildings and et cetera. So obviously schools are very well concentrated. So I'm not quite sure where that's going to go, but my guess is that's going to, at some point in time, schools are going to be deciding to close for a couple of weeks and see where things are. I don't know that I've missed anything.
No, that was very comprehensive.
It's difficult to keep up with this. I have to be honest with you. It changes day to day to
Staff,
day.
Public, we canceled our St. Patrick's Day luncheon
And
next Tuesday, but
Right.
that's part of Human Services, so that's closed for 2 weeks now. So
the key
we'll
here
have to
is
evaluate it on
try to
day to
protect
day.
people as best you
Absolutely.
can. And people have a responsibility to try to protect themselves, and their family has a responsibility to try to help each other protect themselves. And then the community is what we're trying to do here, is to help them do that as well. And I don't know when the end of this is going to be. I don't think anybody knows that. So I think after 2 weeks, everyone's going to sit down and reevaluate where things are.
We may do it sooner depending on what
Depending on-
happens. We're
exactly.
looking
We don't know
day
what's
to
gonna
day.
happen here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I just have
Sure.
a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Inside and outside, there are plenty of sports groups.
I know. I get
They're-
asked
they're,
that
you know,
question.
You know,
Theoretically,
I
it's
run
not
the-
as
I run the
bad as
local
being
league
confined,
here,
but if
and
you're
there's, you know,
if you're
and
less than 6 feet away from each person, then it's basically the same. If you're spread out outside, then it's a different matter.
like soccer,
I don't know how it's spread out.
lacrosse,
Yeah.
you know, I'm throwing it, you know, I just want to know.
I don't
will
know
it-
about this. Obviously,
will it
the
spread
students are.
equally
Yeah.
outside as it does inside if you're close to each other?
Well, I think it's worse inside, but I don't
It's-
think you're
right,
safe.
I'm just asking.
I don't think you're safe outside either necessarily,
Okay.
because you don't know who's ill. The problem is you don't know who's shedding a virus right now and how
Right,
close
we
you are
don't
to
know.
them.
It's,
I
you
mean,
know,
you could be
that's a
playing
concern.
lacrosse, next thing you know, you're coughing at each
No,
other.
yeah, right, yeah, okay.
I heard the 2 weeks is the incubation period. I've heard the term 2 weeks a number of times. If
Yeah,
somebody-
from China, I guess the mean of that has been 2 weeks, been less than that, and it's been sometimes more than that by a couple of days, but
Does
it
that
seems to be
mean-
the time period to develop symptoms and recover.
But in the meantime, if you've been exposed and it's a week later, are you now spreading or does it
Well,
take
if
that long?
you've been exposed and you're ill,
If you're
yes.
ill, once you're ill,
But you may be exposed and not become ill. I mean, it's not a 100%.
right?
Yeah. It's showing symptoms where most of the spread of the virus takes place, is everything I've heard and read. You could be incubating the virus inside yourself, but until you develop a fever or a cough or tightness of the chest, the likelihood of you spreading the virus is considerably less.
Thank you. That's what I was.
And by the way, you have a very famous and good infectious disease doctor in town. He's a member of our board of directors.
Is that Jeffrey Townsend?
Dr. Rick
Oh.
Martinello.
Oh, okay. We have someone on the Beecher Board of Ed who also does epidemiology, and I've been in contact with him. So, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll stay in touch.
I read this earlier in my, for Selectmen's note, but I'll just ask everyone again. At public comment, I ask that you follow a practice that New Haven is now instituting at their budget hearings. If you're here for public comment, please share your thoughts, and then please feel free to leave and watch the rest of the meeting on TV. We're trying to discourage large groups of people from staying together, even though we're all Woodbridge people and we love each other. It's a good idea to just separate. At future meetings, we don't know if we're going to do this or not, but because if this health emergency, thanks guys, does ramp up, we may have public comment only submitted through email, and then we'll read them, so we'll just have us in the room. I hope that doesn't happen, because we like to hear from everybody and see everyone, but which is something we might have to think about. So with that, I would, we can start public comment?
Yep.
That'd be good. And I would ask you to please, the usual, state your name and address, and 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Alexia Belperon, 478 Main Street, Portland. I'm here to give my 2-minute report, because that's what I can do on a meeting that I attended yesterday with some town officials and a representative from the State Historic Preservation Office and some others. At that meeting, the town attorney confirmed what the Historical Society has stated, which is that the agreement that we have, that both First Selectman Heller and I signed just over 2 years ago, that the motion she made 2 weeks ago is in conflict with that agreement. And in particular, that agreement states, by its action, Board of Selectmen of the town has renewed its appointment of the society as its agent for use of the Darling House and those appurtenant buildings and the surrounding land which are shown and set forth on the map attached to this agreement. It's the map that I showed at that meeting, which includes all the buildings and 10 acres. Her motion said the AWS shall be the manager agent of the building containing the house museum and tenant apartment only, no land and no other buildings. Now, although the town attorney agreed that the agreement was breached, he didn't see a problem with that. He said the town owns the buildings and they can just simply change their minds. And so they can vote on a motion, and that we're expected then to sign a new agreement and agreed that we'll sign it, although we have yet to see any new agreement from the town. We provided a copy of our version to you 2 months ago. And I said, well, what happens if we can't sign that agreement? And he said, well, then I expect that they'll vote to evict you. So the conclusion then is that the Democrats on this Board of Selectmen don't think that they have a moral, legal, or ethical responsibility to honor the terms of a legal contract that we have with this town, and that they can change their minds at will and say, you sign a new agreement or we'll evict you. So we continue to come to these meetings because of our absolute dedication to the Darling property. We work with integrity, honesty, being above board and transparent in everything we do. And we will continue to work with the State Historic Preservation Office to try to maintain our presence on the Darling property until you decide to evict us.
Yep.
I never said that the town breached the agreement. I said that the resolution that was passed was looking toward negotiations between the town and the Historical Society for a new agreement, just as the Historical Society presented a new agreement to the town to negotiate many months ago. This was the town's response to that. I expect and I hoped that we would be able to negotiate a new agreement. I don't think there's anything in the current agreement that prevents the town from creating an ad hoc committee to supervise and give advice to the Board of Selectmen. And I never said that the town would evict the society if we couldn't enter into agreement. That's always a possibility, but I never said they would. And there's no breach of the agreement at all by the town.
Thanks.
Okay. Kathy Wick, I live on Rimmon Road. I just want to offer a couple of comments about the Country Club of Woodbridge. I don't believe you mentioned it tonight, Beth, but my understanding is that your intention is to engage a land use analyst consultant to make recommendations about future uses of the property.
At some point.
Is that
yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to suggest that now would be a good time to press pause and engage in some robust public participation in that land use process. We would hope that, since it's been a couple of years since the public has been consulted on this property that is, after all, owned by all of us collectively, that townspeople would have some say in its future. Analysis by a consultant is only as good as the criteria he or she is given to work with. So we'd like to suggest that the town should seek consensus on those criteria before proceeding with a consultant. Given the laws of the state of Connecticut and the location of this property, ownership really is the only way to retain control of it fully. And I think that was borne out in your negotiation process, which broke down over control over what happens there. And it's the only way to retain control and prevent undesirable development that would be outside the zoning board regulations. So we believe that the town must retain ownership of 100% of the property. That doesn't mean that it can't be developed in certain ways.
We? You said we?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'd also like to suggest that dense residential development, such as has been proposed quite a few times and has not resulted even in a viable proposal, be taken off the table. The zoning change that's required to allow such dense development jeopardizes the integrity of zoning townwide. We'd also like to believe that the best approach would not be a piecemeal approach, and all of the approaches so far, going all the way back, have been piecemeal approaches. They didn't provide a plan for the entire property. Therefore, we believe that any plan that is sent to a referendum must be a plan for the entire property. And we believe also that solutions should further the town's sustainability goals. And so,
Is that the timer or the phone? Oh, it's a timer, okay.
does that mean I'm out of time?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are other criteria
Thought it was a phone, okay.
but what I'd like to suggest is that if we stop talking about specific proposals first and take maybe a more abstract look at what criteria we could all agree on, then we might be able to create some consensus and create a plan that would satisfy the vast majority of townspeople. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phyllis Chanel, 30 Richard Sweet Drive. I'd like to talk about the dog park, or not. I'd like to know how it happened that after 22 years, we need a whole new parking area in a property that for 22 years was almost self-sustaining, except for when there was a cross-country meet. That is the only time I remember in the 22 years since that property was turned, when we added the walking trails. which was done by the Recreation Commission, which I chaired at the time with Bob Goodman and this wonderful trailmaster. Who's paying for this whole parking lot that has turned the place around? And why, in God's name, wasn't the dog park put at the Country Club of Woodbridge, which already had all these fenced-in tennis courts and more parking than anybody knows what anyone could do with? And the other part of that is the town paying for this whole renovation that's over there? I'd like an answer to that. And while they're over there working on that, maybe it's time to put some work into the trails that the people in Woodbridge who don't have dogs are still using to walk. I don't think anybody has touched those trails in the 22 years that they went in.
Where are they? I'm
The
sorry.
trails, the walking
The
trails.
walk, at the
Yeah,
Fitzgerald.
they
okay.
need some resurfacing.
Sure.
They badly need
I
resurfacing.
agree.
And really, the dog park is humongous. It's taken over one of the whole. I'm just stunned that this happened, and I am trying to figure out where the money came from to put in this huge parking lot when we could have easily put this dog park over where the Country Club of Woodbridge is.
Well, given the fact that the dog park is where it is, we had to create more parking.
Well, why
And we
didn't the
had-
dog park people put more parking in?
Because it's for the whole town. There's more than one place that uses that. And actually, I had been there many times prior to the dog park going in, where there were spots, not enough spots for my husband and I. Haven't done it in a long time, I admit, but
Yeah,
on
honestly,
weekends in the
Beth,
summers.
for 22 years, I
Okay.
think there might be a handful of times that it needed new parking.
Okay, well, thank you.
So I think that I really would hope that while they're there, that they should do that. And by the way, speaking of the Country Club of Woodbridge, I would just like to tell you that there were 190 golfers at Oak Lane on Monday. There might be some use for that land. Perhaps a 9-hole golf course, a walking golf course that the town could run.
Thank you.
Something to think about.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Beth. Got the arm extenders on. My name is Chuck Pine, 162 Center Road. I am the chairman of the Woodbridge Republican Town Committee. At our meeting last night, our organization passed the following resolution. The Republican Town Committee opposes the establishment of an advisory committee to the Darling House and finds it to be in conflict with the existing agreement between the town and the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society. The Republican Town Committee supports the Historical Society as the agent of control with respect to all the property and outbuildings that make up the Darling Museum. There was a fair amount of discussion in our meeting last night, and I'm going to ask this board to consider a couple of things. Number one, it's our understanding that just yesterday there was a question asked by Mr. Todd Levine of the State Historic Preservation Society asking, why do you need this advisory committee at all? So I would ask you to consider, what is this advisory committee doing to improve the historic preservation of this property? Is it adding any value at all? Is it something that's really going to make an improvement? Second of all, I would ask you, what is the town gaining from all the tumult that all this conversation has generated? Where's the plus? It's created an uproar. It's certainly created some hard feelings with folks in town. And it would seem to at least the vast majority of our members that going back to a steady, trusted relationship between the town and the society that has gone on for 45 years would bring peace in our time. And we would ask you to consider that as you can continue on the events of the evening and your other topics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Hill, 68 Acorn Hill Road. 4 comments. First is responsibility and authority is my first suggestion or lesson of the night. It's impossible to give somebody responsibility unless they have authority. And this whole advisory or oversight committee that is being suggested for the Darling property sounds just like that. You're making someone be responsible for something without them having the authority or giving it to somebody else. Just in any type of management situation or control situation, that is just not a good way to operate. I manage about 935 people in an organization. And I can tell you, that doesn't work. Just doesn't work. You know, if you're going to do that with the Darling House, geez, why don't we do it with the Massaro Farm too? Isn't that the same thing? We have an independent group. I'm sure they wouldn't like that either, and that would be a bad idea there too. Second thing, you know, I'm glad that you came to the understanding that the agreement with the builders for the CCW wasn't working out. I would suggest that in the future that somehow or other through maybe a term sheet or a letter of intent earlier on, try to flush out some key, I understand that it may not apply in this case, to how it came out later in the process, but you know, I don't know how much money we spent with attorneys negotiating a contract to get to a certain point and find out there was a surprise. I've negotiated a lot of contracts between buyers and sellers, and you try to flush that stuff out early. It may have been a little surprise that they figured they were going to get down all the way down the road and then convince us to do something else. So, you know, I won't say more about that. The last thing is I see on your agenda tonight you have appointments on there. So I guess a number of months ago, I believe my wife was appointed to the Government Access Channel Commission. She's yet to be put on the website or was invited to the holiday party, but I think she's still on that, so I'm not sure if you're thinking she's on there or not. She does go to the meeting, so I'm not sure what position that you're looking to fill. So, thank you.
That's cable advisory. It's different, Bob. It's cable advisory. It's different from the government access.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Oh.
Michael Broderick, 5 Old Stowe. I want to make a couple comments. The first thing that I want to say that, you know, as usual, the board has really failed this community because the town and lots of other people knew this developer was unqualified from the start. And it took you guys months and months and months and lots of wasted tax dollars, you know, from inquiry on Mr. Weiner. We found out, you know, $14,000 in negotiations were spent for something that lots of other people knew at the beginning. And in a town that's already strapped because we have decreasing property values and a $45 million decrease in our grand list, that's pretty bad on your part. Why are you guys always behind the 8 ball and never able to, you know, assess like other people in town that he was unqualified? The other thing that people that I get from my practice every day, people are disgusted because you are violating the public trust. The country club building is a valuable asset. You have made the decision to let it deteriorate to where it won't be fixable. That's not correct. You should be spending the money to tarp the roof and preserve the building because your plan has failed, and people who want to see the building used for other municipal uses should have the right to have that asset preserved. So you've really been presumptuous in your decisions and in devaluing a very valuable building that's built by a famous local architect. It's Woodbridge's Penn Station, that's what I've said. And it's really sad what you guys are doing. And it could be why we would spend money to put seniors in the basement of Center School when they could be in a beautiful building at the, you know, in a room at the country club, our gym at the country club. That's what that building should be used for. And, you know, you have lots of other money to waste for police stations, you know, that we don't need upgrades of $5 million on a police station. And Matt Giglietti only saying that that's necessary because they're next in line. That's not how a budgeting or what we would expect from our Board of Selectmen and our Board of Finance to be doing. And I think the problem here is it's such an insular small group that makes all the decisions. You've cut out all the other voices. It's kind of like what Trump does. He only has people who are yes people. And that's what this town government has become. And it's really disconcerting to the other town residents, because now we're seeing your effects. After Skeletar and Ubeth, we now have depreciating house values that are unbelievable. They're not commensurate with other communities, and they're more in this lovely town. So something you're doing is not right. And you better get it right, because we're all paying the cost of your mismanagement. And I'm kind of tired of it. I've lived here for so many years. I've never seen Woodbridge so mismanaged under you and Skeletar, focusing on nonsense like the Darling House that shouldn't be an issue, and on the country club myopically focusing where you should be focusing on our business district, working with the developer that owns a large part of the land, who could do anything to us. That's what I said to you before. He could now sell that off as low-cost housing, and we'd be absolutely unable to stop it. And you totally didn't listen, and that's a very good possibility. If you want to see our tax rate explode, you can imagine all these apartments built in the business district, which they could easily override. And this board has done nothing to ameliorate or fix that situation and work with that developer that would generate good tax dollars. So, I think you have a lot of changes you need to make in how you're governing this town.
We are actually working with the developer in the business district.
We never hear about it, and we never ever, it's always secretive.
Next. Thank you. No, you can stay. It was only if you feel you don't want to be in a hot room with germs. Stay. Stay the whole night. We welcome you. Item 8. Oh, I'm sorry. I just said anybody know stuff. Feel free. I thought we were done. Yep. Okay, no problem at all. 2 minutes, name, address,
Sure.
all that stuff. Thank
Rebecca Harlow, Johnson Road. I just want to talk a little bit about our special meeting that happened on the 25th, and I actually want to take the opportunity to thank Joe and Dwight for being the only two people who even remotely cared about our presentation or were prepared to listen to it.
I don't think that's true. I cared about your presentation. That's not fair.
Okay. So that's fine for you to say that, and I hope that we're stopping the time right now because I don't want to argue with you during my 2 minutes.
You can have 3. But
Thank you.
Don't accuse me of not caring. Not good.
I would argue that most of your actions for the last year have been not good, Beth. So I'll start by just talking to you about a letter, because I think it's time that we start saying all the things that have been happening behind the scenes. So I want to talk about Dick Blackwell's letter to you, Beth, where he asks to postpone that meeting that we requested happen earlier than February 25th, because he had already had a conversation with you and Mika where you determined that it would be better to have it on the 25th because that's when Mika would be here to vote and you would have a majority to accept his proposal without hearing the presentations that you had asked to have submitted. So I'm wondering how you were interested in our presentation if you had already determined that you were voting for someone else's presentation. The other thing I want to talk about is this.
Blackwell's presentation had nothing to do with the caretaker facility at all. So we didn't vote on Mr. Blackwell's presentation. We actually combined presentations, and that's how we came to it, all of which we had prior to the meeting, and we had an ability to look at and read. So just to clarify, we did not vote for a single presentation. We rather combined 2 presentations. As you know, you got the control of the caretaker facility. That was no part of Mr. Blackwell's presentation at all. So needless to say, it wasn't just one.
Okay, sure. So you
Just to correct.
Then I'll amend that and say that you voted, and I'll read Dick's letter. Mika can be there February 25th, and he is on board with the attached based on my discussion with him today. We had a great lunch Thursday, but he is out of town February 12th. So you did vote for a proposal, and the committee that you established was to basically come up with a backdoor way to implement Leland
No,
Road
we did it
plan
on
for
the
the property.
25th because we wanted the full board here.
And please, in regard to your comments, I've met with many members of your society as well, many members of your society as well, who also provided me input, which I also took into consideration. I do care, and I've tried to be as objective as possible. Be careful, I'm just asking
See,
you
now,
to try to be careful.
I would argue though, Mika, that you're actually not trying to be as objective as possible, because I'm one of the people that you've met with, and I remember distinctly a meeting that we had where you told me that you have regretted a lot of votes that you've made sitting on this board, but you will vote for what Beth tells you to vote for, because she is your leader.
I don't recall ever
So,
saying that, please.
I know, you won't recall anything that I have to say, and
Enough
that's really
said.
convenient.
I'm sorry to disrupt it. Sorry.
So I just want to talk a little bit about this committee, which you all voted to establish and determine the members of at some Board of Selectmen meeting, but it seems that they've already been selected, and somehow selected with absolutely no concept in mind of who would actually be appropriate for a Buildings and Grounds Committee. And from what I can gather, the only person who's actually appropriate for a Buildings and Grounds Committee is the only person who's actually held up all of the work happening on this property. And Mika, I'll speak a little more to the question that you had asked us, that how did all of this happen to these buildings that are in question? And, I'll tell you that I can go through stacks and stacks and stacks of agendas where we report month after month after month that all of this work is being held up because Leland is holding up plans, not writing things, not committing to things, saying over and over and over. Now, he's the only person that you apparently want on this committee who's qualified for historic preservation, and we have 2 years of records showing that he didn't follow through on any commitments. Okay.
I'm just not
We
going to
also
use up any more time to dispute. This is, okay.
I also have months and months and months of agendas where you personally visited the site to see these barns. So I'm not really sure why anybody should believe that this new committee or this combination of people will be effective at doing something that we pushed for at least 2 years and nobody would act on. I won't waste any more of your time. Thank you.
I came to the meeting on the 20, but I do want to make a couple observations about that meeting on the 25th. I came here, my big agenda, as you all know, is the Country Club of Woodbridge. I have friends who are on the Historical Society, and because I've been coming to these meetings, I've been listening to all this stuff. So I came to that meeting, and what it seems like to me is that I don't know who the president is of the Historical Society, but she gave a very, what appeared to me to be a professional PowerPoint presentation of what the Historical Society plans to do when they get a lot of funds, which, as everybody knows have been held up. And there were various projects that sounded to me would be funded once one project would be done, then the next project, and then the next project. It was a dry presentation, but it seemed to me that it was rather professional. Mr. Blackwell then got up and showed a bunch of pictures of what's wrong with it, and I really, forgive me, but I really felt that members of this board had a knee-jerk reaction to those pictures. And of course, he took pictures of things that don't look good. Well, there are things that aren't looking good, which it seemed to me the lady who had given the presentation before had addressed in her much drier presentation, but everybody just reacted to these horrible pictures. Well, why weren't they fixed? And how come you've had more than 10 months to do this? And stuff like that. And then I also heard things about, well, how come you're not letting Mr. Blackwell in? He wants to help. Well, Mr. Blackwell, from what I understand, has been siding with the people who's making the the Historical Society's job very difficult. The Torrances, I've known them, I probably shouldn't say this, I've known them for a very long time, and with Mr. Schneider, who wouldn't leave that damn house. I mean, so why would they want to work with somebody who's working against them, and who is also, it appears to me, coming up with a committee which is overseeing the overseers? None of this stuff makes any sense. I'm sorry, guys, but I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
So I just want to explain the resolution that the board passed, because you're not getting, I don't think that the board is understanding or I don't, maybe you, some people here don't understand. The first important part of this dispute that started 9-10 months ago was the Historical Society wanted the caretaker out of the house.
Right.
They
He should have been out a long time
They
ago,
also
Jerry.
wanted the control of the caretaker apartment to put somebody in there that they thought would be a pure caretaker of the property. That's what was adopted by the resolution. They received exactly what they, let me finish. They received exactly what they wanted. The caretaker out and control of the apartment. They also wanted to have more control of the museum and the building that contains the museum. They got that. They got, listen, let me finish. They
Okay.
got, this is not a discussion, I'm explaining what the resolution is, because I looked
Well,
at
I
the
have a
resolution
response,
from
but
a
go
legal
ahead.
point of view.
I understand.
They got 3 of the major points that they were arguing for all these months. The only thing that is different from what they requested is this oversight group. I attended the meeting yesterday where Todd Levine from DECD was present. I got the distinct impression that he thought an oversight group was fine, was fair, and reasonable. That's my impression. I don't know if anybody else felt that. The only one was there was Alexia. I got the distinct impression he saw no problems with it. As a matter of fact, he was talking about the makeup of the advisory committee, not the purpose or the reason for it. He didn't have any objection to that, and he's the person who supervises grants that we can receive from the state of Connecticut. So keep in mind, 3 of the major points the Historical Society wanted, they received. The caretaker is going to be gone as of March 16th. They have control of the apartment. They have total control of the house in consultation with this advisory group. So it's not all one-sided. There's only one point that's different.
Okay. From what I understand, the lady who, and I just want to respond to what Jerry said. The lady who is the president, I don't even know her name, of the Historical Society.
Alexia.
Hi. Stated that whoever at the state is, I don't know a whole lot about the stuff, considers the whole property to be a museum. That was my understanding. And the other thing is, this whole oversight thing, or whatever you want to call it, was brought up by Mr. Blackwell, who, from what I understand, is rather friendly with people who are friendly with the board. So forgive me, but this is the impression that I've gotten from a lot of people. And
So I was at the meeting. He does consider the whole property as part of the whole. He did
Who
say,
is he?
The person from the state of Connecticut. He did say, however, there would be no problem with the oversight committee supervising those outbuildings. He did not object to that. And we can have him here and we can talk about it at the next meeting. He was on board with the oversight committee, and that's what happened yesterday at 4 o'clock.
Jerry, this thing should have never have come up to
That's
begin
a
with. It
different-
shouldn't have come up to
I'm not
begin
gonna
with.
argue with you, that's it. I just said it, okay.
Thank you.
Mary Dean, 8 Mulberry Road, Vice President of the Historical Society. You're quite right. There's absolutely no point in going back and forth, and you said, and we heard it, and you thought we said something different, and all the rest of it. What we need to see are the facts. We need to see that new agreement that you are going to provide for us. Until we do, you won't be able to say, oh, it'll be just fine. You'll love it. We can't say you're evicting us tomorrow. We need that information. The town also needs to know who's going to be on this committee and what the charge of the committee is going to be. We need to know.
Charge for this evening.
Mhm.
And,
I'm just saying we need to
Todd
know
Levine
it.
had
I'm
some
not pressing.
suggestions. No, it's okay. I just want to get the facts out.
Yeah, I heard what you said about Todd. Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
he's going to work with us to make sure that we meet both needs of the town and also the
Yes.
society.
We're very glad to
And
have him
and
help
He
it.
is drafting language, just to show how he's on board.
I
He's
know.
drafting language for us that
Yeah.
could be included in the agreement.
Right,
Which
this
will
is
protect
more
things
stuff,
like
this is too complicated
venues,
to really get into.
weddings,
You
which we
have
don't
to
want.
understand what his particular interests and his concerns and his perspectives are. They're a little different than yours, they're a little different than ours, they're certainly different than Mr. Blackwell's. We need to see what's on paper, and then we need to agree to it, and we need to discuss things in specific, not all this stuff. Now, what I really came up here to tell you, my personal message is, speaking to the point that you saw a lot of very inflammatory photographs last time, I want to reassure you all, and I want to reassure the people in the town that the buildings on this property are not falling down. We are not unaware of their condition, and as you have been told, we have plans to improve that condition. We want to do that very quickly. We could come next week or anytime you say and give you another slide presentation explaining exactly what the conditions are according to our current knowledge. We're building on that in the way that is approved by and endorsed by the State Historic Preservation Organization in a responsible and professional manner. That is what should happen. We do not need to have a committee to tell us more things than we already know. We don't need to have them showing photographs of 1970s stuff that doesn't look very good. They don't even know it's 1970s because nobody has asked us. If you ask us, we will tell you. We'll tell you the history of these buildings. We'll tell you their current condition. And we can work together to address the things that need to be addressed most quickly, and we could work for long-term planning to make sure that everything is going to be taken care of over the long run. But we have to work together and stop doing this stuff. Okay?
Couldn't agree more.
That's my position.
Thank you. Is that really, anyone else?
Everyone might have been here when you read those names now.
Okay.
So maybe you want
Would you like me to read them again?
Well, I'm suggesting that maybe you would.
Okay. I have agreements from Town Plan and Zoning Member Farmer Chris Sorensen, Historical Preservationist and someone who is intimately familiar with the house, Leland Torrance, Town Clerk Stephanie Charleglio, who is responsible as your keeper of all town records, and resident and interested person, Richard Blackwell.
I think you left one off.
Well, I'm waiting for someone from the Historical Society, but they haven't given me a name yet. There's 5.
Did you say Leland?
I did.
He did.
I didn't hear you say that, so, okay.
I did.
No, he said leave.
3rd time. Sorry.
There you go.
I have agreements from Town Plan and Zoning Member and Farmer Chris Sorensen, Historical Preservationist and someone who's intimately familiar with the house, Leland Torrance, Town Clerk Stephanie Charleglio, who is responsible for keeper of all town records, and resident interested person Richard Blackwell. And just to add to this, Sandy has agreed to be the liaison from the Board of Selectmen, and Richard Weiss will serve as he's an architect and familiar with historic preservation. He is not a town resident, so he cannot be a member, as a pro bono advisor to this committee. That's it. Everybody hear it?
And you're waiting for the Historical Society to
I am also
identify a
waiting for the
person.
5th member from the Historical Society. Okay. But as I said before, we're not going to do the agreement until we make sure that we have the language from Todd to protect the society's interests especially, and also the town's interest. So we're not doing it, the agreement yet, or the charge rather, the charge of the ad hoc. Okay. Anybody else? I know, Dwight, you had offered, but Sandy, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Really, anyone else? Really, last call? Thank you.
That's a good try, Doug.
And we'll go now to item number 8, Administrative Officer Director Finance Report, monthly report. Why are the lights out back there? Hi, Rick. How are you? Yep.
Yeah, they were here already.
We're on channel 79 though. It'll be at later on, but you can also watch the whole thing on YouTube.
Well, actually after 6, but there's also that material you have, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I can give
Is
you a
that gonna
minute.
be on the website
I'm sorry,
or something?
did you need something specific related to?
I'm a member of the EMS Commission, I'm a physician, and wanted to hear what the current plan was and weigh in. It didn't happen at 6 p.m.?
No.
It happened before.
It happened before because we were ahead in the agenda. We usually tell people get here 15 minutes before. So,
They're really.
I can give you, everything that,
It really wasn't a plan, it was more of a.
yeah, sort of an
status
update as to where we are as of 5 p.m. today. So, and a lot of it was related to the best practices for the Quinnipiack Valley Health District, the CDC website, and this is the package that has gone out to everybody. If you'd like a copy,
Great.
happy to send it to you.
I have stacks of those.
You what?
I have stacks of those.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay.
Those went out in the mail?
What?
No.
I'm sorry, I
You
can't
can put
hear.
that on the website?
It's on our, gonna be on our website, and we'll
Yeah.
have
Be on
a
the website.
link to it.
But if you want to hear it back again, it is right, I think we're live on YouTube right now, so
I see.
perhaps you could rewind. I'm sorry.
I wanted to weigh in.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Our monthly report through our February is a $6.1 million projected fund balance, or a 12.2% of our annual expenditures. Our charge for services is projected to have a surplus of $67,000, primarily due to surpluses in building permit fees and conveyance fees. We're doing well in those two categories. As you all are now aware through the budget process, we received a surplus funds from Amity in the amount of $671,000. We did put that into the FY21 budget, so that is not part of this projection. The Selectmen's budget should have a surplus of about $40,000 due to a vacant position. The building officials should generate a $35,000 surplus due to hiring of a part-time building official. We're currently experiencing a deficit of about $40,000 in waste management, which I hope to fund next month. It's primarily due to bulky waste, but mostly recycling costs are higher than our projected budget. And finally, our benefits are just shy of $100,000 due to some workers' compensation premium savings and healthcare savings. So those are some of our highlights for the year. Any questions or?
Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Okay. Funding requests.
We have one, well, actually, there are two funding requests. One, you will probably want to wait until you hear a presentation later on in the meeting, or
During
have a
executive
discussion
session.
during the executive session later in the meeting. The other, was
Hot
it
off the
handed out?
presses.
Was it handed out? The
Yes.
3,000
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a $3,000 transfer, thanks to the Woodbridge Fathers Baseball League, or the Bethwood Baseball League, as it's now
Right.
referred.
Dwight was kind enough
Bethwood.
to drop this off today, and
Yeah,
it's
I
a check
dropped
for
the check off
3,000.
for
You have the memo as well? You got that?
And we,
Right.
generous every year, the league helps town offset some of the costs related to, primarily related to overtime, and to other equipment costs, porta potty rentals, clay, all those
Right.
sorts of things. So,
So, yeah, we do that every year.
yeah.
And we thank you very much.
Right.
You're welcome.
So I'll make a motion that we approve line item transfer number 1920-17 in the amount of $3,000 from the Bethwood Baseball League for, it's from donations to parks, and they'll be using that for
Yeah, that's fine.
groundskeeping
Yep.
and things like
Yep,
that.
that's what
So
it's
that's
for.
wonderful. Thank you, Joe seconds it. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C is Historic Documents Preservation Program Grant. We do this every year, Stephanie. I think it's $5,500 now.
Yep.
And,
Correct.
let's see.
So I'll make a motion to
Thank you.
authorize the town clerk to apply for the Historic Document Preservation Program Grant 2020 Cycle 1.
Thank you.
Second?
Any questions or discussions? There's a lot of information in your packet on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We thank Stephanie every year for doing that. Next on the agenda is item D, authorize the first selectman to execute the memorandum of understanding with the Greater New Haven Transit District.
So
This
moved.
This allows the practice procurement of vehicles for the, usually for our human service. Thank you
I'll
for
move
that.
to authorize the first selectman to execute the memorandum
you.
of understanding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
I think it was 10 o'clock at night.
We'll go to E. I'll make a motion to authorize the first selectman and the finance director to lock in electricity rates.
Second?
This is kind of exciting because I guess oil prices are down.
Well, we can discuss
And
these
so-
prices in general.
explanation
Sure.
would be-
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
just-
we
Just
have a
kind of just
second.
curious, right? And then we can discuss.
Yeah, sure, I could certainly do that.
Then we can discuss.
Okay.
You guys are quicker than I am. Whoa.
And keep up, we gotta move it
Yep,
along.
okay, Joe. I got you.
So, I could just discuss, our current contract for electricity expires in October of this coming year. So we still have, 6 months or so left on our contract. However, given the tumultuous energy market that we are currently facing, we're currently looking in to see if the futures market and the market in general is favorable to us getting significantly lower rates than we currently have. So, as you know from prior events, sometimes we have to act quickly. So it would be helpful for us to, this is just like 2 days old. I mean, it came up when the oil
2 days
prices
ago.
dropped.
The market
So
started
we're
on
just
Monday.
giving you basically a flexible authorization that you can keep and watch and.
Correct.
And execute it when you feel it's.
That's correct, when we feel it's appropriate. That was the idea.
He's very vigilant, I can tell you, Tony, is on this like white on rice. I mean,
Yeah.
That was
it's just-
the concept.
Okay. Yeah.
So, because we don't have a specific time frame in mind, although we have to do it at some point before October.
Okay. We didn't want to have to convene a special board of selectmen meeting just for this. Didn't make sense.
No, I think everyone's cool.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Just
And then once you lock it in, just
we'll
let us know.
Yeah, and it also includes, has historically included the Woodbridge Board of Education, Amity Board of Education, at times Orange, the Orange Board of Education, and Bethany. So it's a rather large group that we have.
That you lock in together with?
Yeah. Sometimes
But
some
they
members
all
come in.
have their separate authorization.
Correct. They all have their separate authorizations and their own separate process to authorize it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, thank you.
Yep.
Let's see, where are we? Do you have another
I-
other?
I do not, no.
Yay. I love saying that every time. Okay, next on our agenda is item 9, the Economic Development Commission Tax Incentive Recommendation. Jeremy Rosner, the chairman. Bill, if you can make it.
Jeremy's not here, but Toby, Cleo, and Sean.
Okay, wonderful, 3 members of the commission. So, before you start, just state your name, not I state your name, like, really state your name, your address. And when you speak, just kind of move the mic around for the viewing audience, the TV audience, and also our friends in the back who are taping. And you have something in your packet yet?
It should all be at your
Okay.
place.
Yeah, there's a few pages, yeah.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
So, Toby Wengu, Greenway Road. So, the Economic Development Commission has worked on the proposal that you see before you. It's a tax abatement. We are prepared to speak broadly on the objective of the abatement, strengths, weaknesses, and the process that a person would follow to be awarded an abatement. But, in interest of time and to speak directly to maybe your needs, if there are any questions, we know that when we proposed this, we wanted this to be the beginning of a discussion with this board.
So we just got this at our places, so probably most people have not had a chance to take a look at this.
Maybe
so
you
it
could
really
review
would
some of the
take
highlights.
to give
Right.
to give us a summary. of
Okay,
what's
sure.
here.
And that's not a problem at all. So, the objective of the tax abatement ordinance, which is in front of you, is threefold. We're seeking to grow the tax base. We're seeking to, this is supposed to act as, goodwill to a certain extent, to make it, to signal to the business community that we're meeting a need by rewarding an expenditure that they're making, which is resulting in a higher tax assessment. And then lastly, it's also to, at some point down the road, we believe that this can certainly enhance our grand list. So strengths and weaknesses of the abatement are as follows. Strengths, certainly the abatement will allow the town to, if there is material misstatement, any sort of material misstatement or fraud, the town reserves the right to cancel the abatement. If there are changes which haven't been predicted or expected regarding commercial property, the town reserves the right to cancel the abatement. If there is failure to pay taxes by the person who was awarded the abatement, the town reserves the right to cancel the abatement. If there's no progress on construction, which is expected, the town reserves the right to cancel the abatement. And so I think as an EDC, we've included features and characteristics in this policy that gives the town the flexibility and the right to cancel the abatement. We've also made it so that a person who's eligible for the abatement, we believe this is one of the strengths of the policy, should be a person who is an owner of real property or of personal property who is making an improvement in that property, and the abatement then is being awarded in order to fix their tax assessment. Essentially, it's almost an incentive for them as a result of their investing. Now, we've broken it into two buckets in the proposal. There's personal property, and then there is real property. And if you look at the exhibit in the sheet, you'll see that the floor of the expenditure that can be made, the lowest amount of the expenditure that can be made for an individual to receive or to be eligible for this abatement for personal property is $25,000. And so that would be over 3 years versus the lowest amount or the floor for an investment in real property would be $100,000 over 3 years. And so I think those are the important items to highlight for strengths and for the policy itself. On the weaknesses side, certainly we're aware that transparency, a lack of transparency, could be a weakness. Although we believe the process is straightforward, we think that some resentment could occur if one business owner or one owner receives an abatement and one doesn't. We're also aware of the fact that lobbying can certainly occur. If one business that another business competes with has received an abatement, they'll certainly want an abatement as well so that they can remain competitive. Now, I think the process is fairly straightforward, and it's in the documents in front of you, but the process, to make it very brief, is the owner submits an application. You receive the application and you appoint a designee, a special designee, to assist you in the reviewing and the evaluation of the application. You review the application along with the materials that that designee has provided and created. That designee should be, well, we'd recommend, the EDC would recommend that it's tax assessor, maybe someone on the Board of Selectmen, and maybe an additional individual. After reviewing those documents, we'd expect you then to invite the person who submitted that proposal to make a public statement on the proposal or have a public presentation of some sort. Then we'd either expect you to vote on the proposal or to give the proposal to the administrative assistant, Betsy Yagla, to return it to the applicant and for them subsequently to amend it. Ultimately, if you vote on the proposal and you find that given the investment that the owner of the property has made is something that you believe fits the criteria of awarding an abatement to, then that abatement would occur the October 1st date following. And that would also occur after a certificate of occupancy is issued. I think also, something else that is important that's included in this provision, lastly, there are clawback provisions as well. So for instance, if it is the case that you award this abatement and this is an owner of real property and they plan to make an investment of $100,000 and they make that investment, but the agreement with the town was for the investment to be $102,000, then we'd expect that owner to come to the town and speak to town officials and the agreement would be amended because they're still eligible for the abatement. You know, they've met the threshold of 100,000. But if that individual makes an investment, says they're going to make an investment for 102,000, and it falls to 90,000, then the town reserves the right to collect, on everything that's been deferred, because that person is no longer eligible, for the abatement because they violated that minimum floor.
Cleo Nicolakis, 110 Ansonia Road. The clawback is really meant for if somebody moves out of town. If the business owner has, let's say, a 5-year abatement program because they're investing $1 million and then they decide to move to Wallingford, they're not. That gives the town a right to get back the tax savings that they gave the business owner or the real property owner. So there's protections in place so that the town can get back the money if the business moves or, just essentially in summary, it's an incentive program. They're going to get decreased taxes for a limited time period. The proposed exhibit that we have is basically the maximum that the state allows, but we're leaving it up to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to decide what's the best, if you decide to act on this, to decide the best parameters for a program like this. Maybe you only want to do 3-year abatements or limit it to 5 years and certain percentages, but the exhibit that we provided is the maximum per state.
Okay. And which other towns has this been modeled after? Or is there a town that
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
modeled after?
Hamden, North Haven, Beacon Falls.
Oxford, Derby, New Haven, Middlebury, et cetera.
Okay.
So they have this program, but are they, it's a similar model?
They're all a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why we have to decide as a town what the best,
We have some research on that.
It's statutorily controlled anyway, right?
It's controlled by statute, yes.
Yeah.
12-65B, and I just want to say you've done a fabulous job. I was really very impressed with what you've done so far. We sort of have to go over it a little bit more.
Yeah, I apologize, I haven't completely gotten into the weeds on this.
And the question is.
It's very good.
And the question
what I'm
is,
looking at.
do we need to do it by an ordinance, or
Ordinance
can we
or-
do it? The statute clearly says that the legislative body can enter into agreements with owners or proposed owners of real estate and do the reduction of the assessment. So we don't need an ordinance. We can do it on a case-by-case basis as developers or property owners want to make some improvements to their property.
that's what we weren't sure exactly.
Yeah,
So.
no, we don't, and I checked our charter, there's nothing in our charter that requires a special an ordinance. So it's theoretically possible just to do it by a vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Our only concern was that some of the area towns have the abatements that have to be approved by a town meeting, and we thought that would be onerous and cost and
Right.
time,
Yeah.
so we wanted to make sure the
Right.
program was set up in a way that
And that may be
that wasn't
something that
required.
they have in their charter that requires them to have town meetings, but as far as I can see, we don't have that.
No, go ahead.
What would be the timeline and process from our perspective in terms of implementing something like this? Based on them presenting it to the board at this point in time, what would be the next steps, and how would we proceed from here, and what could be expected?
So I think by the next board meeting, we can have it refined a little bit. The only question that I have is the ability to do this clawback part of it. I'm not sure if there's obviously problems about enforcing it. Somebody is here, gets his assessment reduced, and then moves. Where do we have to chase him to wherever he moves? Could be North Carolina, South
But
Carolina.
wouldn't there be, isn't there potential for a lien or something? I mean, they're property owners, so they have to.
Well, if they move, the property probably wouldn't be there anymore.
Sometimes they're lessees, yeah, they sell the property. No, but Mika is saying we do the lien at the time we give them the reduction of the assessment.
Well, is that permissible under the statute?
It
It
doesn't
is.
say one way or another. I
Yeah,
think
it
you
is
can do that.
included in the statute. So yes, it would be, there would
So
be a
you can
lien
lien
against the
that
property,
clawback
priority lien.
Right away.
Prospective lien for potential costs?
Yeah, you can just put something on that, we've given you the reduced assessment, you have an obligation to stay here X amount of years, in the event you don't, the town has the right to proceed to claw back.
So then we
It's
get
in
it
the
back once
statute.
they sell it.
We get it back at the time they sell it.
Right, if they sold and moved.
Yeah, okay.
Now, that doesn't apply to a lessee of property, because sometimes a lessee makes improvements and they don't.
Not
own
on the
land.
personal property side.
So it might be helpful to have some comparative statistics from other towns in terms of, is it an ordinance? Are they individual decisions that are made?
I know New Haven is an individual decision. They do
Really?
not have an ordinance, yes, they do.
Oh, wow.
They enter into an agreement with the Board of Alders for a particular piece of property, and that's the way it's done.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to do also some data into, since we're not New Haven, North Haven, Hamden, or any of these, our whole base down there, our district is quite small, which is one of our issues, right? This doesn't make it bigger necessarily. It might bring some more people in, but we're talking about a tax abatement, so we're bringing in less money. So we have to see whether we really think that this is gonna achieve the goals that it sets out to do.
Right. It's less money
And
over
I
a
don't-
period of time, and I think, like what was
Right,
said, we
but the
could say.
theory is you're gonna bring in more investment and maybe more businesses
Or
and so.
additionally retain businesses who are looking to expand.
Perhaps, but again, we only have a small
Yep.
base, so
I
do
know.
we have a lot of, in and out? You know, I don't know, I think we need some data.
Oh, absolutely.
on
There's
that.
no
Sure.
action tonight. This
Financial.
is just the beginning.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that in addition, I think we need
We
some
need more information.
pro forma.
Just to be clear, this is a reduction of the assessment, which results in a tax savings for the property owners. It's not, tax abatement is a little bit different.
Well,
but this
whatever
is-
you wanna call it, it's
Yes,
less
an
money to the
assessment.
town.
Absolutely, yes.
So
And it's
if
more
we-
money to the developer or the owner of the property.
Right. And so,
Sean Flynn, North Racebrook Road. We're talking a lot about the safeguards and protections. I think it would be important to focus on the potential positives of this, because this is supposed to bring business into town. This would be a net positive. We're not gonna be losing money, so I wouldn't approach it from that perspective.
Well, I don't know
it's
how-
basically a discount
You can
for
say that, but I
for
don't
an
know
intro,
I think
for
what
an
he's saying
introductory
is that
period of
somebody on
time.
the line may come as a result of this who might not have ordinarily come. The
Yeah,
project might not
well,
work.
that's true, there's a may there, of course, but I don't know that, I think we need some data from other towns.
Okay.
Again, we don't, this is not New Haven where, the universe of people coming in is 400 businesses. We don't have that many
So
businesses.
what kind of data are you talking
Where are
about?
these people gonna come in and go to? All these people that, if we offer a tax, and I'm not trying to minimize it, I'm just trying to
Well,
discuss
I
it.
think what they're saying is it just may be, so suppose it's only one. This gives us the advantage of going to that one individual who says, I want to come here, I'm putting $5 million into a building. Can you do something with me on the assessed value to give me a little bit break, to give me, so my
Right.
deal works? And then we're able to look at that and evaluate it and see whether it works or not. You may turn it
Sean's
down.
point,
I think if
Sean,
you do it, yeah,
in terms of what Sean's saying, it sounds as if it's a new business that considering coming in, and obviously, that's new revenue. If you get a little less new
Right.
revenue, still
But
more than you
it's not
have.
only new business.
Correct.
Someone else
Correct.
down there who wants to put in $100,000 into their property, or 25 into their personal
Could include
property
improvements.
and so
Right,
forth.
right.
And that's not really bringing anything in
New. Right, and
No,
then it
Right,
becomes a matter
but
of,
if it makes it more attractive,
for them
okay,
to stay.
for them to stay.
Yeah, we have to
And
retain
for, and
people,
for
too.
also maybe other tenants that they have.
Right.
Okay, I agree, but again, what's our data on how many people come in, start a business, and move out in 5 years?
No, but if the current business owners invest $100,000, that's
Yeah.
another $100,000 on the grand list.
Right.
I don't.
Ultimately,
or
we're-
not,
So it's
maybe
on,
not.
it's on the grand list,
$70,000
and
on the
things
grand list.
get
And
distributed
so after 7
differently.
years, they get a tax break on it. though.
Yeah.
but Cleo,
Right,
so
that's true,
the
but-
abatement is on the 100,000 as opposed to, in other words,
The abatement's gonna be on the assessed value.
total assessment.
after the improvements are made,
Mhm.
right?
So, that's.
And it
Wait,
did-
on the
and-
total assessed value or just the
new-
improvements?
The new
No,
improvements,
on
just
the
on,
improved.
just on the
Just
improvement.
the,
Just
on
the
the
improvement.
improved. So the
100,000.
base
It's only
stays
new.
the same,
Right.
it's only the
Right.
investment that
On
they're
the
making,
100,000.
right, that you're gonna get.
So
And
the
we did
revenue is
analyze, we do have, lists that we got from the tax assessor of all the available plots, so, we did do some analysis, and we'd be happy to share that with.
Yeah, I think we need that, obviously. We need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And I think even in terms of investing in making the property look better, look more, organized, unified. We have to have something that's gonna get the property owners to do this. And this kind of a program would really help with that, because it's like a hodgepodge down there. I mean, we know that.
But additionally, I think it shows that the town is ready to
Yeah.
take a part in, or actually.
Right.
Right.
And it's
Incent folks to-
very competitive out there. Towns are doing this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if we're not doing it, they're gonna go to Derby
No,
or.
I think it's good, I just
We
think
spoke
need
to
know.
Jenny Kozlowski at the Regional
Right.
Economic Development, and she said, businesses, they're looking for these incentives.
Right.
Right, and if we don't have an ordinance, we have to have some way of notifying people that it's out there.
There's something there.
So
So-
can you share all that, some of that backup
Okay.
data with us? Now, so we can see it, before we have to convene again?
And we'll try and get
Absolutely.
a little modified, proposed document for the next meeting, okay?
And is this gonna go to the Board of Finance next week? Do you know?
They don't need to get it, for informational purposes, I think it would be good to give
Yeah,
it to
I
them,
Okay,
they don't
sure.
need to vote on it.
Right, they
Sure,
don't
we
have
could
to
say-
vote on it, but I
Okay,
think
all
they
right.
may have
Let
some
them see it.
comments
Sure,
or
sure.
questions.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, they should see.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you meant by sending it from then you wanted their,
No,
opinions.
no, no.
Okay, got it,
no.
that's great.
I think they can
that's
be
good.
part of the
Absolutely,
vetting
sure,
process and,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So maybe you guys might be willing to come back next month once you share information, and, any one of you, thank you.
And maybe
And,
what we can try to do is articulate our questions
Right.
in advance so that you
Right.
can come prepared to answer them.
That would be
Right.
good.
It's
Yeah.
great work.
If we get all
Thank you.
that.
If we
Right.
get all the
Really-
information, yeah.
You
But
can
the-
send everything to Mrs. Shaw, and she will disseminate it to the board as one.
Okay.
They've also
And-
got
and
me
Jer-
with Betsy.
Jerry, when you do that, could you include this? So we have everything
Yeah, electronically,
in
yeah.
one electronic,
Yeah,
right, so
yeah.
Betsy don't have to.
Oh, never mind, send them to Betsy.
Or send them to Betsy.
Okay,
Probably have most of it.
right,
Yeah.
there you
Cool.
go.
Let's put it
Okay.
all together.
I was also wondering, so as takeaways, what data what data were you specifically interested in?
Well, there was
Aside
a
from-
mention of, Cleo mentioned something about, you had some data, whatever
From
it
the
is.
tax, any tax information as
Wha-
related.
Whatever you guys had that kind of backed this up and
Yeah,
made
I
you
know about
guys
the
think
spreadsheet.
that this was,
And maybe perhaps some of the
positive.
cities and towns.
It may help,
Comparable.
it may help
Yes.
them with putting data information if someone at the town also, lets our tax assessor know that they may need some information.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm
it
not
ju-
either.
Some of the information I think what I would be looking for along the lines of what Joe was saying would be town-specific information. How many businesses have moved in over the last 10
Oh,
years, or whatever
okay,
it might be?
that.
How much,
Oh, yeah.
what the
I
specific
understand,
information is as
sure.
relates to tax impact to us specifically. And the only way to get that is really to work with that particular organization. And obviously, it always helps to work with them if somebody says, please work with these folks.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it reminds me of, Cleo, you mentioned something about you had data on how many
Yeah, I mean, we,
parcels are down there,
yeah, we
right?
have a list of all the
Businesses and
parcels,
stuff
but
like
we
that.
don't necessarily know when they, moved into.
Yeah.
Moved
And
in
when
or
many of the
moved out
people
and
who
that kind of
move
stuff,
in
yeah,
are-
yeah.
They're renters, basically.
Some
They're
of
not
them are,
actually the
yeah.
owners.
Right,
True,
exactly.
true, yeah, some
So,
of
and
them.
it's, you're not offering this to the renters, it's only to people who own the property, so.
Well, how about the personal property?
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
didn't-
ask.
Still
is this-
owners.
It's still owners of the
business
personal
owners,
property,
yeah.
though,
Yeah,
the
'cause-
business owners, so they could be renters.
They could be renters, but they're not paying taxes to us.
Yeah, personal property.
Oh,
tax.
personal property
Personal property,
tax.
personal
Okay.
property, yeah.
Okay, okay.
So that would be hard to
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the missing
quantify,
piece
but,
that,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a
she should
little
at least
hard,
know.
yeah.
yeah.
But this is
Anecdotally.
great.
It's a great job, thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you so much. I mean, this takes a lot of work to assemble this.
How many months
And
were you
it's
working
great
on it?
that-
We have a good committee.
Yeah, yeah, but it's great
They
that
did
the
it in 2
EDC
days.
is taking this on.
You did it in 2 days.
2 days.
It is.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is, very good work.
Thank you. I
Betsy-
know
Betsy
Betsy
and
actually,
Nico were both very
right,
helpful,
yeah,
Good.
yeah, so that's great.
Great.
Okay, so we'll keep you on
Thanks,
the agenda for
everyone.
next
Thank you.
month. Thank you.
guys.
Thank you very much. We actually meet on a Tuesday in April.
Keep that in
because
mind.
of- Yeah,
We
it's
do?
Tuesday, April.
Tuesday, April
Seven.
7th.
7th.
April
That's what I
7th.
said,
Yeah.
too.
Because of Passover on the 9th, 8th.
8th is Passover?
Yep.
Also my birthday.
We have it off now.
Why didn't you guys have that on my birthday? We could
We
have
have to have a cake on the 7th, is that what you're saying?
What? No, the 8th
Joe, I'm
Here's
having
the
my,
ninth.
Joe, I'm having
is.
my
It's the
knee
9th,
done.
you gotta have 2 cakes.
Knee day on my, knee on the 8th. I want a cake. We're getting through that. Oh, my God. Having my knee done. Okay. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think.
Kudos, Betsy, on helping them put all that
Yeah.
together. Thank you.
That's exciting.
That's, I think that's a good.
You know, I feel bad. You've been sitting there. You're like at the end. So could, if anybody,
So-
if the board would agree, we could perhaps,
What do we
Yeah.
do?
oh, Susan's here for personnel too. Why don't we zip that right in before we go into executive session? Thank you. I didn't still see you there. Sorry. Why are the lights out back there?
Yeah, I don't
Put 'em on.
No.
No, they've been out.
Someone must have switched them off.
Maybe the switch was shut.
Gremlins.
Oh,
There you go.
Thank you.
thanks, Prue.
All right. We like to see who's out there. I see Susan now. Thank you. So
what are we
with the board's
First, we're going to
agreement,
12.
we will go to item 12 next, a Personnel Committee report. The Personnel Committee meeting was this morning at 10 o'clock, I think.
Yep.
And, let's see, Dwight, we were all there, Dwight, me, and Sandy. And perhaps you want to lead with what you explained to us, and then we can discuss what, you want this? Jerry whipped out the minutes, the draft, but it helps a lot.
Before we do that, can I make a suggestion? Just a suggestion. This is, this is kind of an important thing, I think, right?
Yes.
You think there's any way it would be better for us to have like an hour special meeting or something? To kick this around once we get all the, I don't know, I'm just thinking if it's part of another meeting and we have to spend considerable time on this.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think we should spend considerable.
You're talking
I
about
do.
this, you're talking about
I
the
like that
EDC,
idea.
this thing that just came up?
Yeah.
at the
Yes.
end?
Yeah.
Sure. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. I wasn't sure what you were
I
asking
just
about. I
think
didn't
it's
see
an
what
important
document
thing
you were
that we
holding
should
up.
devote enough time.
I was
energy
worried you
to.
wanted to talk about this for a special meeting in an hour.
No.
I
I'm
like
talking
that.
about this.
I think that's great.
I don't think we should get it lost in our one.
As soon as we get all the data,
Yeah.
we can try to schedule
Whatever,
that
next
with
one,
everyone.
whatever.
Okay.
That's good.
That's
All right.
good.
All right.
I will have a couple weeks when I won't be here, but no problem. Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. That's a good idea. Okay, back to personnel
Okay.
now.
Sure. So there are 2 items for your consideration this evening. The first is the Director of Human Services. So we conduct, after the appointment of the interim director, we conducted a statewide search for, to see if, an applications for the director's position, and including sending it to organizations that all towns have members of, and also other areas we've advertised the position. And so we received a number of applications, and we've interviewed perhaps 5, I believe.
Susan, do you want to come up as well to the mic, just in case? You want to add something?
So we interviewed
Sorry.
5 individuals, and after the committee discussed it, it was our recommendation to the Personnel Committee to appoint Jeanette Glicksman, the Director of Human Services, at a salary of $72,000 per year. She was, we felt, the most qualified and the right fit for Woodbridge based on the number of applicants and the background of the applicants that we interviewed.
Maybe Susan could just give an update from the committee, name the members, and
I would just say,
and the commission's opinion
I don't
as
really
well.
need this, do I? I would just say that Jeanette really stood out as an outstanding candidate for a multiplicity of reasons that Tony already mentioned, and the commission voted unanimously to support her candidacy. And 2 members were not present that evening, and I contacted them the following morning, and they were very excited to hear that Jeanette had been our recommendation and that we had voted on it as a commission. And so it makes it unanimous all the way around. Jeanette has been a member of the staff for a long time, started with Youth Services as the assistant director there, and then for the past 3.5 years has been an awesome director of the center. and then served as interim for a while. And in a time when grant writing is very important, that was one of the things that really stood out, that Jeanette has a great deal of experience as writing and granting. Grant writing is very important in this time of tricky budgets. And it was amazing that many of the candidates had very little or no experience with that, and we thought that that was a really important part of the.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve Jeanette Glixman as the new Director of Human Services at a salary of $72,000.
Second.
Effective.
Wait, effective, okay, immediately.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Anyone have any
Is
discussion?
Joe still second? Second, yeah.
Okay.
He can
thank
still
you.
second.
Do I have anything to add as
No,
you're
that
at
was
the
fine.
personnel?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're okay.
thank you.
I'm the liaison on that
Yeah.
commission, so she's done a good job.
Thank
And
you.
we appreciate Dwight is always there and is very helpful.
Thank you.
We thank him for that.
Okay, good. All right, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hanging with us for a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The second item is in the library.
You're up next, don't worry.
So the assistant director of the library is retiring after probably close to 20 years. And so Eric has taken the opportunity to do a slight staff reorganization. He is not filling the assistant libraries director position, but recommending that we hire in a head of technical services, which is a lesser position than assistant director. And so the recommendation is an internal one and was also recommended by the Library Commission, that effective April 9th, Elena Fernandez, who is currently the head of adult services, assumed the new position of head of technical services at the salary of $53,000 per year.
Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, to get the discussion going, I will make the motion that we approve Elena Fernandez, salary of
53.
effective April 9th,
April 9th.
because
Second.
That's when Lynn retired.
Sarah is here until
April
April
8th.
8th, right?
That's fine.
Okay, have I got that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion? I know, do you have any comments? You have personnel? It's all good? Okay, I applaud Todd, and I commended him for, once again, looking at positions. you
Eric,
know.
Eric.
Eric,
Eric.
oh boy.
Todd hasn't been here for a
I
long
know.
time.
Jeepers. Oh, man. Okay.
Wow.
Thank you.
Eric has done a great job.
Yes.
He really
He
looks
continues to
towards.
look at positions and
Constantly.
figure out a way, can we
Right.
do less with more?
Right.
Is
But
that
also
with
very
less, yeah.
More with
supportive,
less,
no, but
and,
very supportive
What-
of internal promotions.
Yep.
And really
Exactly.
giving our employees an opportunity to advance.
Yep.
And I think
He's
that's
done a
really
great job with
important.
that. Yep.
It's really, it's great. He's doing a wonderful job. So, anyway, so I thanked him today, and we'll thank him again in
So
public.
should
Yep.
we all
All in
vote on
favor?
this?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did
That's
a
it.
motion, a second. I don't know if you were here for that part, Sandy.
Yes, I did.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you
That's it.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, now I would ask the board's indulgence to go now to item 17, executive session, since our consultant is here, a person. Pursuant to section 1-200, I'll make this motion as I read it. Parens 6, N parens, parens C, N parens, parens E, N parens, public safety. Michael Boucher is coming into executive session. I will also invite in Attorney Weiner and, how are you? Finance Director Tony Genovese.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.